What is virtue? Behavior showing high moral standards.
Well, surely it's more than that, right? You think virtue is just the way we act? Well, maybe not. I've also heard it said that patience is a virtue. So virtue isn't just another personality trait or action or character trait. It's got to transcend that somehow. It could be a set. Like the set of traits that are... No, I don't think it can be a set. It seems like we're reducing the value of the word virtue. And even if it were a set, would what is in the set define what virtue is? Or would what virtue is defined as define what goes in the set? That was terrible.
No, I think it has to be the second.
How would we know what to put in the set if the set itself were defined by its contents? True. So all we know is that virtue has its own definition, and it's beyond just a set of things. Well, I think virtue is that which is good. All right, well, what distinguishes good from virtue? Well, goodness is an untouchable standard by which all men try to abide. And when people do abide by it, it usually results in the flourishing of most or all. And then what is virtue? Virtue is a descriptor that's attached to that which approaches or resembles goodness. That makes sense. That's why you can call something as abstract as patience as a virtue, but you can also call a man virtuous. Yes, but if virtue is that which approaches goodness, then what is goodness? What exactly is it that virtue is approaching? Well, goodness is just goodness. I don't know. Maybe it's something like that which is morally right. You know what I'm gonna ask? What is morally right? I propose that what is morally right is what benefits the most people at the lowest cost. Really? Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me, do you think this would be morally right? You're standing on a bridge, it's an overpass, and there's a train that goes underneath, and there's a train barreling down the tracks. And behind you, there's 5 workers, and there's next to you a fat man who's fat enough to where if he were to go in front of the train and the train hit him, he would die, but the train would stop. Now, you, in order to save 5, push the fat man off of the bridge so that 1 dies, but you save 5. No, something about that doesn't sit right with me. Well, yeah, because you've saved 5 people, but you've sacrificed something infinitely greater than the value of 5 people. You sacrificed your soul, you've sacrificed your clean conscience. So what, am I to let 5 people perish? Well, maybe the answer is to throw yourself off of the bridge. So ultimately you still do save 5 at the cost of 1, but your soul isn't tainted. Yes, that's right. So that means that what is morally good or morally right isn't just what saves the most at the cost of the least, but also it must not taint the soul, which is the ultimate cost. What exactly do we mean by taint the soul? Somehow I just feel like we know when something taints the soul. Maybe it's not something purely intellectual. The soul, it pokes and prods at us, and it seems like the soul yearns to not be tainted. You mean guilt? Yes, guilt and regret and anger and sadness when someone else taints their own soul. And how can I be sure that what your soul longs for is the same as what mine longs for? Well, it's gotta be that way, doesn't it? I suppose it must. Yes, it must. Otherwise, many other people, would be genuinely opposed to fundamental things that we believe. But people discussing politics and politicians are always opposed to each other's ideas. Well, what is politics but the collective striving and struggle of humanity to create a socially optimal society? That's true. And I guess no one wants an optimal society that consists of people killing each other, child sacrifice, or lying and stealing. Well, I actually don't know about that. Take the Aztecs. I think they killed each other and ate each other to keep the sun in motion, or something like that. Yeah, that's kind of tricky. What is the natural state of man? Virtuous or not? I think man virtuous by nature. Interesting. So do you reckon yourself a virtuous man? Well, when you put it like that, I'd say I'm in pursuit of virtue.
Would a virtuous man need to pursue virtue?
I suppose not. if it were the natural state of man to be virtuous, then we would not need to pursue virtue. Right. So man is not by nature virtuous, but we are in pursuit of it. Right. So it would be natural for some, or many, or all, to fall short of being virtuous. Hence societies like the Aztecs or people like Hitler. Right. How could it be the case that humanity seems to strive for the same goal? We don't really communicate to each other our needs and wants in terms of morality, but we seem to know what everyone wants. It has to be that the origin of morality is external to us, and it must be a rigid standard. But couldn't the origin be individual if they all happen to be the same? Well, that's just the result of some external standard, is it not? Well, actually, I think you're right. The only way for us to have a universal standard is if it were external from us and eternal, transversing through time. Because if it really were up to us, it would take some coincidence for all of ours to align. Where does the standard come from? Well, that's the million-dollar question, I guess. God? What is God? Well, if God is the standard, he must be good. He must be willing to save 5 at the cost of 1, at the cost of himself. What is love but the sacrifice of self in service of something else? So God is love. And to love is virtue. Virtue ultimately approaches love, which is the ultimate good. And to act in love is always virtuous and morally right. In that case, I think that saving many or even one in service of something greater does not taint the soul. It does taint it with something eternal, like a glimpse of purpose or an eternal good. The soul yearns to love. Well, people have been writing about love since people basically existed. I mean, it's an idea that transcends time and space somehow. Our idea of it has remained largely unchanged. Maybe love is more real than we can see or hear or feel. Interesting. How come? Well, would you bet your life that that pencil exists? No, I don't think so. Would you bet your life that you've experienced love? Yes. But how can we be sure that's not just some material chemical process that goes on in the brain? How can we reduce the complex layers of intimacy and care that we have for each other to just biological processes? Isn't it illogical to love someone to the point where you would lose yourself in service to them? Isn't that against the idea of self-preservation? I guess, but I still think it could just be neurons firing and chemicals reacting in your brain. Have you ever loved anyone? Yeah. What does it feel like? It doesn't really feel like anything I can put words to. It almost feels like your entire body and mind and soul are towards that person, right? Yeah. You really think that's just chemicals and stuff? No, I guess not. It's too visceral. Exactly. Why do people do stupid stuff for love? It's a conflict of reason and intellect with something else. So there is something else. A raw desire. Something like that. It's only a conflict of reason and intellect with that desire if reason and intellect are based on self-preservation. Right. If you approach reason and intellect from some other angle, then it could ultimately be logical to give your life in service of something else. So reason, intellect, virtue, and morality all converge and point to something greater outside of themselves to be defined themselves. Well, I mean, it's got to be love, right? Yeah, I think so. I'm tired. Let's define love and be done. All right. Complete mental and physical devotion to the well-being of another, even to the ultimate point of sacrifice of self. And virtue approaches goodness, and goodness is what is morally right, and what is morally right is ultimately love. So, to be virtuous is to be loving. Yeah, that's good. You heard of Jesus Christ?
carinho seja o beijo.